deeply disheartened by the court's ruling, quote unquote. In your statement, you advocated that using race in admissions is better than race-neutral policies. So given that your entire body of work has been one of advocating for race considerations in admissions, why did you tell the Board of Trustees that the Supreme Court ruling is aligned with your view?
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you for the dates. That's been mentioned here before and in some of the decisions of this board itself. In 2016, that was almost 9 years ago, in very early
Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon to you and welcome into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. I want to let you know a little bit of what we have ahead for us here over this next hour here on Florida Live. Coming up at 11:40, we're going to speak with a couple of our theme park experts because today Disney unveiled a new concept art for a Cars-themed land that's part of the largest expansion of Magic Kingdom in history. So we're going to talk about that and show you those drawings coming up in just a little bit. We're also getting our new look for the Orlando Magic, new branding, new logos, some exciting new developments, new jerseys, and new court as well. So we'll show you all that. We're going to talk about it as well with Brandon Kravitz from 96.9 The Game. Budget conference begins in Tallahassee after weeks of debate and disagreements. Some progress at the state capitol when it comes to getting that budget done and avoiding a state government shutdown. We'll talk about that with Kimberly Leonard from Politico in just a few minutes. But you see a live look right now inside the Board of Governors meeting. They are meeting right now actually in Orlando as the State Board of Governors considers the confirmation of Dr. Santa Ono as University of Florida president. He is the president-elect right now, having been approved by the University Board of Trustees, but the State Board of Governors is now asking him questions. He's come under a lot of scrutiny over previous embrace of DEI policies at the University of Michigan, where he was before coming to Florida. And a lot of questions about that. A lot of controversy over that as well, because we have seen Congressman Byron Donalds, who is, of course, running for governor. We've seen Senator Rick Scott also express their concerns about Dr. Ono. Let's go ahead and listen in as the questioning continues of Dr. Ono.
And it's based upon experience. That's why I mentioned the evolution of thought, not just by myself, but Florida and the higher education space in general.
Yep. So after the Supreme Court ruling in 2023, you did an interview on PBS where you advocated for a holistic admissions process, looking less at AP exams and classes and looking less at standardized tests. In January of this year, you implemented a holistic admissions process, going to test optional. What I'm trying to get at is what you've said before now, until a week ago, you support alternatives to merit-based admissions like holistic, and you implemented it just this semester. So I want to understand, do you believe, as you have in fact advocated and implemented this year, in test optional, looking less at AP courses is the right policy, or do you now no longer believe in holistic admissions, which you just put in place at Michigan?
Thank you for that question. As you know, these sorts of decisions are made in conversation with the entire board and with the provost and the deans of the institution. To answer your question, I believe that standardized tests are very, very important because it focuses on merit. So I wanted to answer that question.
Okay. So your position on that has evolved since January.
Yeah, I mean, the position was not mine. As I said, it was a position of the entire institution. But my personal, to answer your question about me, I have advocated for using standardized tests because of my conviction that merit should be, that decisions should be made, admissions decisions should be based upon merit.
Okay. In your interview with the Board of Trustees, you referenced that you eliminated the DEI programs at Michigan. And I point out that you did close the DEI office and program in March after President Trump's executive order and a slew of other federal actions. that really threatened, and you cited that in your announcement, that really threatened funding for universities that continued those programs. So in truth, continuing the DEI programs would have had a disastrous implication for Michigan and any other school that continues them. You referenced in your interview a scathing story, in your interview last week, a scathing story that was in the New York Times in October of 2024, and it heavily criticized Michigan's DEI programs, quoting students and some faculty about the culture it created on campus. October 22nd of 2024, a few months ago, in response to the story, your provost sent an email message to colleagues throughout campus that said, quote, "When our critics cast our DEI efforts as consisting solely of discrete programs, this is a misunderstanding. Our DEI programming, which is excellent, is only one part of the picture. Diversity, equity, and inclusion permeate all we do on campus because they are a part of our core values that you implemented back in 2023. Our core values," this is part of the quote, "our core values are not changing." So this was obviously well into the timing of when you said you had begun the conversion away from DEI. Your provost was being honest, and her honesty captured exactly what the insidious nature of DEI is. It's not programming, Dr. Ono. It is a culture and underbelly that exists, which you can't merely close. It takes a deeply held conviction and resilience to root it out. And by the way, I believe it still exists at UF, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, what your provost said about DEI being a part of Michigan's core values and those values not changing was a definitive statement that would seem to indicate a decision was made to keep the elements of DEI, quote, "permeated in everything we do on campus, including in its core values." Did you ever direct that DEI be removed from Michigan's core values?
I would say that they are all removed now. The provost of the university, that was her statement. She was at the university for quite some time. She was dean of the dental school for about a decade. And so that was her statement, not mine. I would say, in addition, that the decision to actually start to evaluate DEI programs, as I said, started when I first arrived in 2022. And I know you've looked very carefully, in June of 2023, soon after UF closed the DEI programs, a committee was struck to look at DEI statements. That's in the public record. In fall of that year, in November, we actually eliminated diversity statements in higher admissions. And so it clearly shows that for this entire period of time, we've been evaluating and making tough decisions. And I will continue to do that here at Florida.
Yeah, and I note that your faculty with a 60% vote recommended the removal of the diversity statements, and I credit the faculty for recommending that. I will say the answer you just gave, the question I asked is, did you direct that the core values be changed? Because prior to removing the office, your provost, who presumably you work very closely with, told everybody our core values aren't changing, and in fact they have not changed. Your core values, which I have right here and are currently on the website, cites diversity, equity, and inclusion as core values of the university. And the example behaviors on the core values say acknowledging and managing one's own biases, advocating for an inclusive hiring process, and challenging behaviors that may lead to unjust outcomes. What are unjust outcomes?
Well, the core values that you're mentioning are part of something called the culture journey that occurred several years before I even arrived, as you know. And my decision was, as I've said very clearly, to close the DEI programs and to sunset the program. There may be something still on the website. I think if you go to the UF Union, you'll see diversity and inclusion still on it. As you've said yourself, there's still some of it there. So I think it's something like that. But to be very clear, I have been crystal clear about my desire to close down the DEI programs for the reasons I mentioned in the interview.
Dr. Santaono defending his work and also talking about his belief that as he's gone through this process, he has said that he changed his mind on many of those DEI kind of tenets because he believed that they went too far and weren't doing what they really were supposed to be doing. So you heard him talking about kind of making those changes and addressing some of those questions from the Board of Governors. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is time now for our Tampa connection, and for that, we go to Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay. And Nancy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Garrett. Thanks for having me today. Today we're going to start over in Clearwater, where Clearwater police say they now know the identity of a body that was found 31 years ago near the Clearwater Pass Bridge. They say that that man has been identified as Edmund Eric Gleed, and he was 84 years old when he died. Now, Gleed's body was found on November 29th of 1994. It was found floating in the water near the east side of the bridge that leads up to Sand Key. Police say a neatly folded pile of clothing was found near the shoreline near a lifeguard stand on Clearwater Beach, but there was no identification among the clothing or on the body. Now, an autopsy was conducted, but the medical examiner's office was not able to tell how this person died. However, the medical examiner did say that foul play was not suspected. Now, keep in mind, this happened in 1994, and recently, Casey Connolly was in Illinois searching a database for missing and unidentified persons when one image from Clearwater caught her attention. Now, Connolly is the co-founder of Moxie Forensic Investigations. That's a nonprofit made up of volunteers who use genetic genealogy to help law enforcement solve cold cases. Now, last June, she reached out to the Clearwater Police Department and said she wanted to help identify this man that was found back in 1994 in Clearwater. So additional samples of the victim's DNA were submitted for testing. That was done in conjunction with investigative genetic genealogy. Eventually, the team was able to find someone that they believed was the man's son, and a cheek swab confirmed that it was actually the man's son. Now, the son is now 94 years old, and he said that he actually reported his father missing from Fairfax, Virginia, back in November of 1994. He actually reported his father missing 2 days before that body was found in Clearwater. Now, it is believed that Gleed may have been suffering from dementia at the time of his disappearance and ultimate death, but it is unclear how he made his way to Florida or what he was doing in the water in Clearwater. Now, while those questions may be unanswered, the team says they are very glad that they were able to help identify Edmund Eric Gleed and also bring some type of closure to his family. Garrett?
Yeah, and you mentioned his son now 94 years old himself. And those are questions, that he's had to carry with him as well for a good portion of his life.
Yes, that's right. This was 3 decades. Can you imagine 3 decades of not knowing what happened to your father? And he did report him missing from Fairfax, Virginia, not in Florida. And he seemed to have no idea why his father went to Florida. He didn't know his father was planning on going to Florida. And didn't really have any ties to the Clearwater area, so there are still many questions left in this case, but they were able to provide some closure to the family and finally put an identity with this body that was found back in 1994.
Yeah, story number 2 today, Nancy, and that a deputy-involved shooting in Polk County.
Yes, that's right. Polk County deputies were actually able to arrest a man they say is a known gang member following the shooting. They said that Tonio Evans had a trafficking amount of methamphetamine on him yesterday at the Sunoco gas station in Winter Haven. They tried to arrest him at that gas station, but Evans took off and crashed into multiple law enforcement vehicles and even forced a deputy to the ground, injuring that deputy in the process. That's when another deputy fired several shots at Evans and hit his vehicle. Now, nobody was injured in the shooting, and Evans did drive away, but he did not get far, about a mile away from the Sunoco store. Deputies said they arrested Evans after he sideswiped another vehicle after crossing the railroad tracks on North Lake Ship Drive. Now, 2 people inside that vehicle were taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Now, Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd said that Evans has a lengthy criminal history. However, he did not go into details as to what that criminal history includes. But Evans is now facing multiple charges, including attempted murder of a law enforcement officer, trafficking methamphetamine, and fleeing to elude. Garrett?
Third story today, Nancy, and that is a road rage incident that certainly took a turn. But the interesting thing is it all caught on camera as well.
Yes, that's right. This whole thing was caught on camera, and this happened down at the riverfront in Bradenton. Now, police officers with the Bradenton Police Department say Rayshawn Poole was waiting to turn left out of a parking lot near the riverfront when Anthony Williams turned left into the parking lot right in front of him. Williams parked his vehicle, and that's when Poole backed up to confront him about not using a turn signal. Williams and his 16-year-old passenger got out of their car, and that's when Poole claims that Williams showed him a gun. Now, video shows Poole starting to drive away several times, but repeatedly stopping to argue with Williams. Then you can see Poole reverse his car, then put it in drive and accelerate toward Williams, striking him in the leg. He also hit a tree and a stop sign in the process, and that's when police say the 16-year-old passenger that was in Williams' car grabbed a gun and began firing it at Poole. Now, all 3 of these men were detained after the incident. Poole was charged with aggravated battery with a motor vehicle, and the 16-year-old was charged with aggravated assault with a firearm. Police say charges are pending against Williams, and they add that he was not seriously injured when he was hit by that car. Garrett?
But Nancy, just another example of how we've talked time and time again about how these road rage incidents can so quickly spiral out of control.
Yes, that happened really fast, and you wouldn't think somebody would get that upset. Yeah, he probably should have used his turn signal, but he was turning into a parking lot. Someone cuts you off. Yeah, it may make you angry, but you don't expect that it to turn into this, somebody to be shot at. And we were talking earlier today in the newsroom that did you really need to have a turn signal on when you're pulling out of a parking lot? You probably should, but it's definitely not something that you should get that angry over, where it leads to practically running over someone with a car and shots being fired. So this is definitely another example of road rage that got way out of hand very, very quickly. And another thing we've noticed, like this whole incident was caught on camera. We're noticing more and more of these incidents are being caught on camera as well.
Yeah, and more people, I think, using dashboard cameras, just private citizens having dashboard cameras that show things like this as well. So it's certainly interesting. Finally, Nancy, and this is a teacher in Manatee County arrested.
Yes, that's right. This female teacher down in Manatee County is accused of sending an explicit photo to a 14-year-old boy. Now, the Manatee County Sheriff's Office said they began investigating in early March when a school resource deputy at Carlos E. Haley Middle School learned that 28-year-old Oliver Fell had been talking with the boy through Snapchat since December of 2024. Investigators say Fell sent an explicit photo to the student on January 2nd of this year, and more evidence gathered between March and May of this year pointed to lewd conduct involving that teen. Fell turned herself in on Monday, hours after a warrant was issued for her arrest. She faces charges of lewd contact with a student by an authority figure and transmission of harmful material to a minor. Both of those charges are felonies. Now, as of this morning, jail records showed that she was being held without bail. Garrett.
Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us for our Tampa Connection.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with more after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. Lawmakers back in Tallahassee today, finally beginning that long-awaited budget conference that had been, there'd been a lot of questions about when it was going to happen because of disagreements that had been going on for weeks, and needing that session to be extended. That's just one of many political topics we have to cover today. And so joining us on this Playbook Tuesday is Kimberly Leonard, a reporter with Politico Florida and the author of the Florida Playbook newsletter that you can get delivered in your inbox every morning. And Kimberly, always good talking with you. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Yes, of course. Hello from rainy South Florida.
Yeah, you have seen quite a bit of rain there lately. So let's talk Tallahassee and the budget conference going on today, and kind of what we have learned about the agreements, the deal, and the starting point for work there on the budget.
Yeah, well, leaders from each chamber had to let some top priorities go by the wayside. Albritton, who leads the Senate, had wanted a rural renaissance bill to really pump state dollars into rural counties in Florida to help with economic development. And they're going to actually be pushing that back to take another look at it next year in next year's legislative session. And then Danny Perez, who leads the House, has agreed not to push for this, major reduction in the state sales tax that he had wanted to see. It was going to be the largest in state history, but Albritton simply couldn't get his hands around it, given how much less revenue would then come into the state. So those are some of the sacrifices that have been put along the way in order to try to get at an agreement. DeSantis hasn't talked about it very much. He's still pushing for some kind of property tax relief as recently as Monday, and he also wants to see a sales tax holiday around hurricane preparedness items, which usually we would have had by now. It would be going on, but because of the budget stalemate, it hasn't yet. So lawmakers are in Tallahassee, as you said, and they're doing these different committee meetings where they are, really hashing out the details when it comes to healthcare, transportation, education, and all the important state services that are provided to us by our state government.
Kimberly, you mentioned hurricane preparedness, and I want to highlight an interesting conversation that you had with Kevin Guthrie from the Florida Division of Emergency Management, where he talked about some new technology that the state's going to be using this hurricane season.
Yeah, that's right. It was actually developed at the University of Florida, which is pretty interesting. It's called Beacon, and it's an app that people can download. And it essentially adds to, the weather service announcements that we get now, but it's much more targeted. It uses artificial intelligence. That technology is set to disrupt a lot of our lives, and it sounds like hurricane preparedness and response is no different. And so it's going to be able to be, what it does is that it uses different text messages and press releases and other kinds of reporting from the state and from local governments and broadcast them to people so that you can actually then tune in, not just on the app, but then they're going to have partnerships with local TV stations and radio stations where they can actually use the voice of someone that communities trust. So maybe it's Governor DeSantis's voice, making announcements about specific communities, what they need to do to prepare, what the updates are regarding a storm's path, if it's time to evacuate, for example. And then also give them information about how to receive resources they need once the storm has passed. And so it's as far as I know, Florida's the only state that's using it, and it's just interesting to see, how the state kind of learns from each disaster and then prepares for the next one. So this one was used a little bit last year at about 4,000 among about 4,000 people, but they're really heightening its use this year and hoping to make it a statewide effort.
Kimberly, let's take us all down to Miami, your area, for a little bit here. A Democrat from the Miami area announcing a run for Attorney General.
Yeah, Jose Javier Rodriguez, who used to be a state senator and was part of, he lost his election a few years ago because he was part of this scheme basically that recruited all these candidates, they're called straw candidates, that essentially what they do is they sort of winnow away a small number of votes so that eventually it adds up to, that candidate losing. And he is going to be running for state attorney general, which as our viewers might know, James Uthmeyer, who's the former chief of staff for Governor Ron DeSantis, is sitting in that seat now because DeSantis appointed him to it, but he has to run for re-election in 2026. And so far, we don't have any other Republicans who have challenged him, but I know from my reporting that there are a few that are looking at it. They're not quite ready to share openly now, but it should be a very interesting race. On other parts of state government, there's a lot of chatter about, the Trump slate versus the DeSantis slate. In other words, those candidates in Florida that are Republican that either Trump endorses or DeSantis endorses, and who wins out in the end. So the state attorney general role may be one of those. But so far, the only challenger that has emerged is on the Democratic side. And one of the reasons there's just not as much chatter about that is just because Democrats, have such a disadvantage in Florida right now. But obviously that could change really quickly depending on, how the economy is going and voter perceptions of President Trump.
It's going to be another interesting race to watch, and over the next weeks and months as it shapes up as well. Kimberly Leonard, Politico reporter and the author of the Florida Playbook newsletter. Always good talking with you. We appreciate you joining us every Tuesday here on Florida Live.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
What defines a team's identity? Before we played any games, it was a logo, uniform, and a vision for the future of basketball in the City Beautiful. There was an energy in those early days that was created by our fans and captured the essence of who we were and how we played. With a little luck, larger-than-life personalities, and generational talent created must-watch basketball. Our identity was synonymous.
The star and the pinstripes are back. The Orlando Magic today unveiling a new logo, some new branding, and those new uniforms as well, echoing some of the old as well. Joining us live now via Zoom to talk about this is Brandon Kravitz, who's a host on In the Zone, 96.9 The Game. And Brandon, good talking to you. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Yeah, I love a good rebrand, so excited to talk about it.
All right, so give me your initial thoughts when we first started seeing the drops before we saw the actual jerseys. They did kind of tease that it was going to be a little bit of nostalgia for us.
Yeah, and that's something that I think fans have been clamoring for a while. The logo itself is going to take some getting used to. I loved the prior Magic logo. I felt like that was not something that needed a refresh. I thought they were just going to go for the jerseys, but I love the throwback feel. And if you think about it, for those, because anytime there's any sort of brand adjustment, there are going to be those that love it. There are going to be those that don't like it. Maybe they're not ready for it. If these were simply the city edition uniforms, they would be widely praised. I think universally praised. People are freaking out because this is a big change, but I think they look really sharp. And especially that white jersey with the Magic across the chest. The star is the A. It's a really clean look. The black one that looks like the old Penny starter jacket, that's going to look so good out on the basketball court. So I'm pretty fired up. I think this, I don't know that they needed a change, but I never think it's a bad idea to refresh the brand.
You mentioned the black one, and I'll wait till the picture comes up there so that you can see it a little bit better, and then I'll stop it right here so we can all see it. I know you've seen it too. I've seen that one getting some pushback on social media. Some folks who maybe aren't sold on that one just yet.
Because it's different. And I think people have a hard time wrapping their heads around something that looks so unique, but that's what I love about it. There is not a jersey in the NBA that looks like that. You're going to be able to tell within seconds when you see that jersey, wherever you are in the country. If you have any sort of knowledge of the NBA, you're going to know that that's the Orlando Magic, and that is what is going to set that jersey apart from the others. I predict that within the first, let's say, 2 months of the upcoming season, that will be the jersey that every Magic fan wants to go out and get from the team shop. Right now, it's polarizing because of how unique it is, but I think that one is really going to grow on people. But that's the thing. It's so different. It's just going to take some time to adjust to the uniqueness of it.
Oh, I always love a good Brandon Kravitz prediction. So we'll see how that one holds up too in just a little bit. So you talked about not necessarily knowing or not necessarily thinking there was a need for this. Why do you think they decided to do this and do it now?
It's a great question. Later today, I'm actually going to talk to Shelly Wilkes, who's the SVP of marketing, and so for the Orlando Magic, and I'm thinking she'll give me a pretty good answer on that. I'm going to ask that exact question. My guess is that you look at the stars for the team right now, a pair or a trio. Those are the guys that they used in the actual release of this branding, this rebranding, and Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero, and Franz Wagner. I think they see that trio as one that's going to carry this organization into the next era. And that is something that we see across sports. Whenever teams feel like they're turning over a new leaf, they like their threads to also tell that same story. So I think the timing of it is Paolo and Franz specifically coming into their own as superstars, all-star level players in this league, and really making this their brand, their team. And I would not be surprised if they had some sort of say in the way that these jerseys looked. I think it very much is about the stars on the team, and that being the next era of Magic basketball. If you look at all of the changes they've made over the years, every time they've made a change stylistically, it's come with a different star. Shaq and Penny started with the original to what this retro look is, and then you went to Tracy McGrady, had a completely different jersey. Then Dwight Howard, they went through a rebrand when Dwight Howard was the star of the team, and now they're doing it again with Paolo and Franz. I'm thinking that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, so when we see that tagline there that we saw a new generation of Magic basketball, that's no coincidence. I mean, this is just kind of a visual representation of this next generation, hopefully that really is just getting started when it comes to Magic on the court.
Absolutely. And I think, as goofy as it sounds, I've always believed in the mantra, look good, feel good, play good. And this is something that we've seen across sports. I use the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as my go-to example, and this is the most extreme version of it, but walk with me here. You had the old creamsicles that now fans like. Now fans, when they look back, they like the creamsicles. At the time, this was not a popular jersey. And the team lost a lot from when they debuted in the 70s until they started winning with Tony Dungy and then John Gruden as their head coach. And one of the things that they changed as they started to change their culture was the look of their uniforms. And that's when they went to the charcoal and the pewter and all of that, and the pirate logo that we know now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But they didn't start winning until they changed their look. So this has happened over the course of sports history. There are other examples, but I won't bore you with the rest.
So this is going to usher in a new era and lots of success for the Magic.
Yeah, I think it's, you can believe in this as much as you believe in astrology, if that's the way you want to go with it. But yes, I wholeheartedly believe that when you refresh the look and you time it exactly right, that's the key, is you got to get the timing right. And just given where these players are in their trajectory in the NBA, it feels like one of those things that could, we'll look back and go, oh, maybe the rebrand is what helped to spark some of this success for the Orlando Magic.
It certainly doesn't hurt. A lot of excitement over it. I can dig it. I like the pinstripes, so sign me up. I know that.
Yeah, I think it's a clean look. They're going to sell like crazy. And then what I'm excited to see personally, because I'm not a jersey purchaser myself, but I love I work the games, so I will always stock up on the quarter zips. They get a lot of my money in that regard, and then I get a T-shirt here and there. I'm excited to see the variations of the apparel that comes with this. I believe the team shop is open as of today with some of that new stuff. I haven't seen it personally yet. I wasn't able to make it down there earlier this afternoon, but that's the kind of thing that I'm looking forward to, because that's what I will personally be wearing.
Yeah, I always like a good hat too. I believe the team store open until 8 o'clock tonight, I believe is what I saw. So if folks do want to check out some of that new merch, they can do it at the Kia Center. Brandon Kravitz from 96.9 The Game, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live. Always good talking with you.
Yes, same to you. Thanks.
We're going to take a break, and as we do so, give you a live look at the Kia Center along I-4 in downtown Orlando on this Tuesday afternoon. Keep it right here. We have much more to come after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. We are ready to cross some new frontiers at Magic Kingdom with a new Cars-themed land and some concept art that shows a lot more about what it's going to look like, what all it's going to entail. Let me give you a quick look at that as we bring in our theme park experts. Theron White, the lead publisher of EYNTK.info, and Drew Smith, you know him as Drew the Disney Dude, at Drew Disney Dude on X. And we appreciate y'all joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live. Looking forward to talking about this because we're getting our first look at Piston Peak National Park.
Yeah, this is looking really, really fun. I'm really excited to see this new concept art. We've already had some of these colorful images that you're showing up on screen, but now that they've got this map, I feel like it really kind of shows what Imagineering has been trying to do. I feel like it might have gotten lost in original concept art, and now almost having this cartoonized version lets us see what they've been wanting to show us. I see waterways, I see waterfalls, I see geysers, and they've already said there's going to be walking trails and 2 attractions. It looks very cartoony, but not too cartoony. Like they're trying to find this fine level between the Cars world and the real world. Disney already stated that this isn't based off a specific national park, but it is going to have a national park feel, and it kind of looks like Wilderness Lodge as well. I think it looks very, very cool.
Drew, let me get your thoughts and also how this kind of fits in to the worlds around it in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, I fully agree with Theron, and I will say in full transparency, me personally, I think a lot of people know that I'm a massive fan of Tom Sawyer Island and the Rivers of America. But with that being said, credit where credit is due, and obviously the jury is still out because this project doesn't physically exist yet. But this new concept art we got today, like Theron said, this looks a lot better than what we had before last August when this project was first announced. The fact that the first thing that we're going to see when we walk into this area from the hub of Magic Kingdom through Liberty Square is a massive waterfall, which is going to be sitting in the exact spot of where the Liberty Bell actually docks now, I think is phenomenal. The staging of that is going to be incredible. And that kind of leans into what you just asked me, actually. How does this fit into Magic Kingdom? Well, Disney today confirmed that Imagineering is putting a ton of time, effort, and money into the staging of this area and to make sure that these areas flow together so that, for example, if you're waiting in line for the Haunted Mansion, while you're not going to be looking at rockwork and car engines whizzing by, they're going to be forming these areas with all the trees, the rockwork, the staging, the storytelling to make sure that you're not hearing cars whizzing around, or when you're watching Country Bear Jamboree, you're not necessarily looking into Villain's Land. Everything is being meticulously planned. And for me personally, I'm very optimistic for that reason alone.
Theron, Drew was talking about the incorporation of the water features there, and that really isn't something that we could see in that original concept art. Do you think this was the plan all along, or do you think this may have been a reaction to some of the response to getting rid of Rivers of America and some of those other things?
I think it might be 50-50. While I do think they originally had plans for water, I definitely think there was going to be an idea for a stream and stuff like that. And in some of that initial concept art, we can actually see the vehicles themselves going through water. That being said, every single time concept art has now come up about this land, it has shown more and more water. Fans were very adamant about being upset about losing the Rivers of America. That is the #1 water feature at the park. It's huge. It's been a part of there since the park initially opened in 1971. So I don't know that this necessarily wasn't the plan the whole time, but at least wasn't portrayed like this the entire time. And now I think that Disney's definitely trying to make it obvious, hey, we're going to have water. And it's not just even the water they initially showed. I love seeing that they're expanding the geysers from Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. So it looks like in every aspect, they're really trying to combine all the different sections of Frontierland, Liberty Square, all of that into one succinct area. And like Drew was saying, it looks like they're trying to make the storyline all together as well. I mean, that's a lot. If you look at the concept art, we've got mountains, we've got geysers, we've kind of got multiple different sections of the American frontier, and they're squeezing it into one area. So I'm interested to see how that's all going to flow, but they did specifically mention that they are working heavily on that.
And we do know now as well when the Rivers of America, Tom Sawyer Island, and the Liberty Square Riverboat are going to close.
Yeah, that's going to be happening. Oh, go ahead, Drew.
Yeah. So no, sorry. That's the funny thing about these dual interviews. We both have the same thoughts. But yeah, the final day is July 6th, which is coming up here in just about a month. So as of the morning of July 7th, You'll never be able to go on the Liberty Bell Riverboat again or Tom Sawyer Island. And I think it's cool that Theron had these pictures of what it kind of looks like whenever it was going into this refurbishment a few years ago, because that's what we're going to be seeing here very soon. But yeah, you've got just over a month to experience these areas, and it's going to take a lot of time for Disney to get this project into motion, because you have all the staging backstage with these gravel laydown yards, which are going to support this area. And then you actually have to fill in the river and then start that new construction from the ground up.
Yeah, going to be a pretty big transformation, because this is all part of the largest expansion in the history of Magic Kingdom, Theron.
Yeah, that's not just this section here. They're also going to be working on the Villains Land, and Disney announced that they're going to be having the train that goes around Magic Kingdom. It's actually going to be a little bit different. It's not going to go to the station in Frontierland now for a limited time while they're working on this. They haven't given an exact amount of time for that or what exactly is going to be happening, but they are going to be modifying the Walt Disney World Railroad for a limited time while this work is going. So it's not just Cars Land, it's also Villains Land. They're doing a lot over there. And one thing I can hope we can go back to years from now in this interview, Drew said we'll never grow on the Liberty Bell again. I kind of hope that you're incorrect there. I hope we get a surprise and they instead decide they're going to move it to a hotel, or we'll see something else with it. Maybe that'll happen. Who knows? But I just hope we can go back and be like, you know what? The Liberty Bell was not at the Magic Kingdom, but it did show up somewhere else. We'll have to see for that, though.
All right, good stuff. With all of this, I want to ask both of you what you're most looking forward to with some of these changes that are coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, the biggest thing that I've taken away from this is that Disney is putting a ton of time, money, and effort into making this exclusive for Magic Kingdom. I think in recent years, there's been a ton of feedback with Disney cloning attractions like Tron Light Cycle Run. It was in Shanghai originally, and then it came over here to Magic Kingdom. You know, with this, you know, you already have Cars Land over at Disney California Adventure at the Disneyland Resort. They could have easily taken a lot of those animatronics and characteristics from those rides out there and brought them here, but they said, no, we are going to do an 100% original land with all new original storytelling. And even today, we got confirmation of a new character, Ranger J. Audubon Woodlore. That's the car that you guys are seeing on screen right now. This is an all-new character that you're going to see in the pre-show for this Cars Rally Race ride, and is actually directly inspired from a character that there was in some of the Disney short films back in the 1950s. So when there's this much level of effort going into making this original for the world's most visited theme park, that's why I remain optimistic on top of this concept art looking much, much better.
And Darren, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Drew there. It does look like they are putting a ton of effort into this, which, look, to be honest, they have to. It is the most visited theme park in the entire world. If you mess up severely inside of this park, it's going to be noticed not just by superfans, but by everybody. So I do feel confident they're going to do a lot of work on this. One of the things I was most excited about is they did confirm that there's going to be walking trails. I personally love that. I think that's something that people loved inside of Tom Sawyer Island, is that you could just kind of walk around and enjoy the space. So if we are losing Tom Sawyer Island, to see that we're still going to get some trails. They already have it over at Animal Kingdom to go around the Tree of Life, and people love that. It's actually one of my favorite parts of the park. So if you're telling me that I can go on a simulated national park walking trail inside of the Magic Kingdom with a new Cars ride and all these great landscapes, to me, that gets me really, really excited. I'm interested to see how those trails are going to work out.
All right, a lot of things to look forward to, and some new details today. Theron White, lead publisher of EYNTK.info, and Drew Smith, Drew the Disney Dude. We appreciate y'all joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live, and we are going to take a quick break, but we will be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live, and a live look from our Launch Credit Union camera along Florida's Space Coast. And we know that in 1 week, June 10th, that morning at least, Axiom 4, the mission scheduled to launch from Florida's Space Coast, going to go up to the International Space Station. It is a crewed launch, taking 60 experiments across 14 days on the ISS. The full crew in quarantine right now, ready for a launch in 1 week. And we did hear from the crew members earlier today, including the commander, who is Astronaut Hall of Famer Peggy Whitson.
Unique way of bringing people together, and I'm proud to be a part of a mission that reflects that spirit. I'm honored to lead AX4, and I can't wait to share this journey with all of you. And now I'm proud to unveil our zero-G indicator for AX4, Joy. It's a plush swan symbolizing grace and elegance. More than just a companion, Joy will signal our arrival in microgravity shortly after launch. Joy represents the shared aspirations of 3 nations united in their return to human spaceflight. The swan is rich in cultural symbolism, stands for wisdom in India, resilience in Poland, and grace in Hungary. Through Joy, we'll celebrate our diversity and our unity in the shared journey of space exploration. Over to you, Shooks.
Thank you, Peggy. Namaskar, and a warm hello to everyone. This past year has been nothing short of a transformation, a journey of growth, discovery, and unshakable resolve. As I stand at the threshold of a 14-day mission to the International Space Station, I reflect on the path that has brought me here. From diverse systems to advanced platforms across continents and cultures, this training has been intense, but deeply rewarding. Behind every minute in space lies months, a lot of times years of preparation. I am deeply thankful to every member of the team who has shaped this journey through their expertise and dedication. This mission stands on your shoulders. And to my family and friends, your strength and support have been my anchor. In the most demanding moments, your belief kept me moving forward. My crew too, not just exceptional professionals, but they are truly remarkable teammates, and I have been grateful to them for every step. As I prepare to spend 14 days aboard the ISS, I carry with me not just instruments and equipment, but the hopes and dreams of a billion hearts. I will be conducting 7 Indian experiments developed by brilliant minds from the research institutions across our nation, investigating the effect of microgravity on cultures ranging from stem cells to crop seeds. These experiments will pave the way for India's progress in microgravity science, and I'm proud to be the bridge between Earth and orbit for this pioneering research. Balancing this scientific ambition with a rich cultural heritage, I carry symbols, souvenirs, crafted by the talented students from the National Institute of Design, celebrating India's culture and creativity. These artifacts represent the spirit of our country in space, and I carry them with deep pride. From orbit, I will also be speaking live with students, educators, and members of India's growing space industry, sharing not just experiences, but inspiration. If even one young dreamer is moved to explore the cosmos because of this mission, we will have already succeeded. I hope to ignite curiosity and excitement in young minds, to let them know that space is not a distant dream, but a future they can shape. With the bold ambition of sustained presence in space, Bharat, with missions like Gaganyaan and Bharatiya Antariksh Station, will need the young generation to be invested in space exploration. Hence, I call upon every Bharatvasi to join us, participate, engage, and dream boldly about a future that is exciting. Our crew has chosen a special zero-gravity indicator for this mission, a swan. In Indian culture, the swan is the vehicle of goddess Saraswati, symbolizing wisdom, learning, and purity. It is said to have the rare ability to separate milk from water, a symbolism that is a powerful reminder of discernment in an age of distraction. To carry this symbol is to carry the essence of our mission: pursuit of knowledge, clarity of purpose, and grace under pressure. Now, With the training behind me and launch just ahead, I feel deeply inspired, prepared, and confident. The excitement of venturing into space, of experiencing a new way of living, seeing, and being is beyond words. और अंत में कुछ शब्द भारत के लोगों
That is the pilot Shukla, who is from India. You see the others beside him on the crew from Poland and Hungary as well, and Peggy Whitson from the United States. We should note that this will be the first government-sponsored human spaceflight in more than 40 years for those countries of India, Poland, and Hungary. Again, that launch scheduled for next Tuesday. Thanks for joining us here on Florida Live. We appreciate it. We hope to see you again